I think one other element, and you probably wouldn't have seen this as nearly as much as I did, but I feel like AI actually really stepped up in terms of my industry. So, for example, when it comes to cold outreach, there's kind of three main areas. One is, what are you offering, right? That AI is never going to replace. Well, I shouldn't say never, but highly unlikely, because that's understanding a market, the human element, understanding the psychology of the market, what people want. That it can't replace. But there was two other elements, which was, one is list building. Like, how do you find the people that you're going after? And the third bit is, how do you write really good emails to get their attention?
Welcome to the Master Dealmakers Secrets podcast. And now, here's sales growth strategist, John Blake.
Welcome to Master Dealmakers Secrets. I'm John Blake. This is episode 227. And today I am pretty psyched because I've got Wang on the podcast with me. We had a chat probably maybe longer than a year, a bit over a year maybe. And it was a fantastic episode. I had a lot of people that listened in. It was one of the highest ranking episodes of the whole year. So I'm really excited to have Will back. Will and I have been on a surf trip together. We've sort of chatted on and off for years. Will's just exited one of the businesses that he started, so he could potentially share us a bit about that. And he's just such a wealth of knowledge in terms of marketing, in terms of writing copy that sells, words on paper that compel people to take action and buy. And he has and shares a lot of the same philosophies that I do when it comes to marketing. So, mate, welcome back.
Mate, thank you so much for having me back. It's an absolute pleasure to be talking to you again. It's been definitely too long since we last had a chat. So, thank you. It's awesome to be here.
Awesome. So yeah, you and I have sort of compared notes on and off for a long time. You have done a bunch of stuff. I mean, I do some marketing type work for clients, but most of my stuff, as you probably know, is more about converting those leads once somebody like yourself or a digital agency has generated those leads. The thing that I really like about your approach is that it is the direct nature of it. It's like, okay, work out who you want to work with, put a message together that's going to be compelling for that particular target, and send it out. And some of the results that you've got in terms of open rates, response rates, by going direct, and in many cases largely cold, is quite phenomenal. So it'd be great for you to be able to share some of that stuff. I mean, the only real parallel that I can draw is years ago when I started in this business, sort of over 20 years ago now, and I had this warm list of people that I could talk to because I'd been in the surfing industry for 18 years, and I had all these warm contacts that were like, hey, come and help us with our stuff, Blakey. It'd be great. So I worked with Oakley, I worked with Rip Curl, I worked with O'Neill, worked with Creatures and Otis and West, and, you name it. Like, if there was a surf company, they invited me in there. I did a whole bunch of stuff with retailers. But after about 4 or 5 years, we got to the bottom of that list. And the surfing industry sort of, took this dive, was this nosedive where it had gone from being this cottage industry, massive growth, hit these highs, and then the bit where we jumped in on, timing, like how important is timing. Mm-hmm. So it was the perfect time to niche action sports in consulting because they were all looking to optimize what they were doing. But then, once we'd sort of managed to extract all of the optimization out of all of these businesses, it just went into this decline and, coincided with me getting to the bottom of that list and with a lot of people just really battening down the hatches, cutting costs. And so we had to like, because I had a business partner at the time, we're like, we're not that good at marketing. Like, we're good at, if we've got warm leads or we've got inquiries, we're good at converting those leads, but we just didn't have enough. And so we had to, we looked at all sorts of things. We were speaking from stages, it was the early stages of internet marketing. So it was 2006, 2000, probably more like 2008, 2009. And we tried a whole bunch of things. And the thing that ended up working was going direct, like putting together a compelling message. In my situation, putting that into a pack, into a contact marketing pack, sending the pack, calling the person, getting in front of them. And that was the thing that I had the most success with. And that's what has always appealed to me with what your approach is because, you get clear on the target, get clear on the message and send it out. So, mate, long way of getting around to my question. My first question, which is, mate, you've recently exited that business and now you're kind of doing your own thing. Be curious as to what you learned along the way, and perhaps I know that you've always continued to be a student of this stuff, so I'd be curious to get your take as to what's working now in that space.
Yeah, man, it's been a really interesting few years, actually. I think it has been a couple of years since we spoke because during the last couple of years, I feel like the market's kind of taken a turn. Whereas even before then, things used to be a lot easier, right? Or at least I felt like they used to be a lot easier. Like when you knocked on doors, they used to open. You could at least get your foot in, at least have a conversation. But the past couple of years, I feel like it's been a pretty tough environment to operate any kind of business in. And so that was, I've taken a lot of learnings from the last couple of years. So happy to go into that and just kind of share all of that. Because when I started my business, it was about 8 or 9 years ago now. And so I started that off the back of, this massive GFC that happened. Businesses were starting to recover from that. And it was just like a whole lot of fluctuations in the market. So I kind of missed the back part of the really hard times. And I started this business and it kind of just, did pretty well and grew pretty organically, right? All the way up into COVID, where COVID was actually a massive driver of growth. So it was interesting to operate in two kind of different markets and just see the different cycle that came through. Again, long way of saying, I think what I really saw was that with all the fancy marketing stuff that people were doing outside of, just going direct, stuff around, building these massive webinars, building these groups, all that kind of stuff, that kind of stopped working as effectively. Whereas the direct stuff, even though it still took a bit of a hit, it was still kind of going back to the fundamental principles of you can still go direct, but you're just solving different problems. Like people have got different problems on their mind, but you can still go direct and just change the way that you're talking to the market, change your messaging, change your offer, but still get some decent results, even if people are a bit more fearful. So that was kind of a very eye-opening thing for me, just around what do you do when the market kind of goes to shit, when people are fearful. Can you use the same tactics and strategies to get the similar results? And there's a lot of learnings from having gone through that kind of market sentiment.
Gotcha. In terms of I guess one of the questions is, what was it that attracted the buyer to your business? Because it's quite unique, and there's so many different choices. If you wanted to buy a digital agency, there's so many out there. I'm curious as to what was it about your business that attracted the buyer, or I guess what was it about the unique aspect of your business that attracted the buyer?
Gotcha. Yeah, cool. That's a really interesting question, actually. And I think I can definitely talk to that in a bit more detail. So the marketing landscape, you're right. Like every man and his dog has an agency, right? Like there's no barrier to entry. There's a million agencies out there. A lot of them say the same thing, do the same thing. Some poorly, some okay, some well. I think what really helped us to stand apart was that the service we offered, i.e. the cold email stuff that went direct to clients, B2B focus, the dream client kind of system or chasing system, I don't think a lot of other agencies did that. So most of our competitors did the Facebook ads, the funnels, whereas it didn't really go down the direct lead, direct response, direct mail kind of angle. So I think that was the first thing that kind of stood out. We also had a pretty good base of clients. We had some pretty famous clients that we served over the past. Here in Australia, we've served companies like Airwallex, who is a massive unicorn, multi-billion, like massive valuation at the moment. We've served RACV, which is a huge group in Melbourne that does hotels, travel, car insurance, motor group, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, they're huge.
Yeah, they were massive. So, and we've done a lot of work in the US with some massive growth companies that were funded by Y Combinator. So along with the unique approach and system we had, we also had a really good track record of brand, i.e. past clients. So I think that was the main things. There was also like a strategic play, so that the company that bought us, they had another agency as well, another SEO agency. And so part of the strategic thinking from their side, I think, was that if we can generate leads for ourselves and go direct, not only are we another source of revenue, but we could also generate or use the same systems to generate more leads for the other businesses.
So it's like another, pardon me, another product that they could sell to their existing clients.
Yeah, exactly.
Got it. That's cool. That's cool. So, I mean, it's been what, probably 8 months since you exited that business, something like that, or a year maybe.
Yeah, I think I was actually in New Zealand when it happened, so it was August last year.
That's a
So
good place to be.
yeah, now to tell
Be
you
doing something fun.
yeah, we were snowboarding, but
Yeah.
that place, it's magic for me. It was the place where I first decided that's it. I'm going to start this business, and it just so happened that when we signed the contract and actually got the money in the account, we were actually back in New Zealand. So mate, that place is just complete magic for me.
Wow.
It is my 1.5 home. It's yeah, just love it to bits.
Yeah, that's so cool. So right before you got out, what was going on in terms of, what were you finding was working in the type of campaigns that you were doing? You said that it had evolved. You said that the problems that people had on their mind were a little bit different. I'm curious, what were some of the things that were working really well, just before you exited that particular business?
Yeah, so well, I mean, the things that worked continued to work, but the offers and how we talked about, the stuff that our clients were doing, that changed a lot. So, for example, we went from a greed cycle where you could talk about, can I generate some extra revenue? Can I bring in more clients? Can we do more sales? We went from saying that to saying, well, how do you retain more of your clients? How do you stop more of them from leaving? How can you cut expenses? How can you raise profitability? And so one of the key things that I saw was we had a lot of clients who were in tech, right? Massive funding, VC companies come through, give these tech companies a massive amount of money. None of them make any profit until very late on. We saw a massive change in sentiment with those companies. So they used to just throw money at us and go, yep, we just want clients. I don't care how much it costs per client. Just go get us clients. When all of a sudden they go, we can barely pay your bills. How much profit can you actually make us? So it was night and day, instant switch in terms of how they perceive the market.
Yeah, isn't that interesting? I mean, even I don't know what it's like now, but I heard that for many years Netflix didn't make a cracker. Yet they were spending, they kept doing capital raise after capital raise, and they were spending all this money on all this content. I mean, it must be pretty nerve-wracking to run a business that big, or any business for that matter, and just not see any profit. You know what I mean? It's like it's the very definition of delayed gratification. I've never been able to run a business like that.
Yeah.
It's like, it's not how much you make, it's how much you get to keep. But a couple of things that you touch on there around retention. I mean, just even if I look at my own business, I have primarily just run a project-based model, where I've had people that I'd work with for between 3 and 12 months. And then after that, it was like, I'd help them implement the stuff, help it embed it into their business, depending on who it was and how big they were and what they needed done, or help them find a new salesperson. And then at the end of the term, that was it. And it got me thinking. I was like, okay, well, if I was going to offer something, what would it be? And the idea was right there. It was like, I'm helping them to build this sales machine, and we're getting it on the tracks. And might they need either some insurance or some guidance to make sure that engine stays on the tracks? And it's like, yeah. So then I was like, okay, well, what might that look like? And that's what I put into practice. And I've got a bunch of people who are on that now, and that's actually been really fun to run that out and to simplify the support process and keep people getting growth quarter on quarter. So the retention thing's massive. The the whole idea of making these businesses more profitable and increasing profitability, that's massive as well. So were you helping them to do that, or were they the messages that you were sending out into the market to win work?
Yeah, so we used to help our clients with the messaging as well, right? So I kind of guess that's one thing that made us different from other marketing agencies, where a lot of agencies they get the brief, they go do the ads, run the campaigns, and if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. Like they won't think about why didn't it work, like what was the offer. Whereas for me, because we didn't work with that many clients and it was designed like that on purpose, I
Yep.
could really go into the fine tuning and say, hey, have you thought about how the market's viewing this? Have you thought about this messaging? So it was actually for both. So we looked at it for ourselves, and then we looked at it for each and every single one of our clients and said, well, how does this shift in sentiment actually impact what you're trying to do? And just to your point about retention, actually, one of the things that we actually changed within my agency before I left was the idea of maybe we do move towards project based, because when the economy slowed down and people were a little bit more hesitant to spend, we found that the retainer stuff actually wasn't as attractive as a bigger upfront project fee and then a smaller retainer. So it's quite funny how that kind of works, because we used to operate only on retainer. You had to sign up for between 3 to 6 months, and then for each month there's a payment that comes out. But towards the end, we were experimenting. I just found it to be a little bit more effective when we just said, instead of, for example, $7,500 a month, why don't you pay us $12,000 for a setup, and then it's $3,000 a month afterwards. So we experimented a lot with the pricing, with the packaging, and it just seemed to me anyway, for different types of services. And I think with what you do, it absolutely makes sense to have a retainer play behind it, because nobody learns sales once and then they're a sales master. Like I've never seen it in my life, and I've worked with thousands of salespeople. But for us, it was kind of to the point where we can just do a project, and then sometimes our clients would just run the systems themselves. And at least that way we kept the relationship with clients, even if we had to wait 3 or 6 months between projects.
Yeah, that's actually a really, really good point. The ongoing thing with sales, and it's it's one of those classic things. It's like, well, why didn't I offer this 3 years ago? But I'll never forget, I had this conversation with a guy that I used to work in a fashion agency with, and he'd not been in sales for a long time. And I remember him contacting me because he was trying to do like a capital raise thing. And he was like, oh, have you got any, do you have any strategies that I could, maybe use to get in front of some people that, I could talk to about capital raising? And I remember thinking, wow, you've forgotten so much of what we used to do. It really is one of those muscles that atrophies if you don't use it. And all it, it might, and even I even notice it myself. Like if I go through a stage of, say, I don't know, 4 or 5 months where I'm just really just busy delivering service to people that have all jumped on with me, and I haven't had to really do that many conversations with new clients or whatever. When I get back to that point, I notice it. I'm like, wow, I'm not as sharp as what I was 6 months ago when I was, doing 2 or 3 appointments, every other day kind of thing, So it absolutely does atrophy for sure. It's one of those things that you just need to, the biggest ingredient that I think I provide, the biggest spark plug that makes the engine work, is accountability.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like just taking total ownership of your results and your activity and the direction that you're pointing in. And that's the thing that we typically, well, not that we typically, that is the number one ingredient of all the people I work with. I'll never forget, I worked with this electrical contracting client. I used to catch up with him every Tuesday, and we'd be sitting there in the meeting room, waiting for them to come, and then they come in, and I'd go, okay, so Sam, last week when we caught up, you said you were going to call this guy, and this guy. How'd you go? And they'd go, well, interestingly enough, I actually just got off the phone to And you
Yeah,
knew that it was because they looked at their calendar and they've gone, oh no, I committed to doing these three things.
yeah,
John's sitting there in the meeting room waiting for me. I better get off. I better, get off my ass and make these calls. So, yeah, that's a massive ingredient. But yeah, it's interesting that just the different sensitivity to price. The upfront and then the monthly ongoing. I've noticed that as well. Like I just used to, it was 6 months and it was this amount, per month, and then with some clients I would have like an upfront incentive, but these days, yeah, it's more of an upfront thing, and then just set up, because everyone knows that, and I think everyone gets intuitively that most of the heavy lifting is in the front end anyway, and then you get to support them in the ongoing, and they can hang around as long as they want. I think that's the other thing. It's like making sure that they know that it's on you to make sure that they have a great experience and that they want to hang around. Yeah.
yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think one other element, and you probably wouldn't have seen this as nearly as much as I did, but I feel like AI actually really stepped up in terms of my industry. So, for example, when it comes to cold outreach, there's kind of three main areas. One is, what are you offering, right? That AI is never going to replace. Well, I shouldn't say never, but highly unlikely, because that's understanding a market, the human element, understanding the psychology of the market, what people want. That it can't replace. But there was two other elements, which is, one is list building. Like, how do you find the people that you're going after? And the third bit is, how do you write really good emails to get their attention? Those two are starting to get affected by AI quite a bit. The list building, especially, there's really good software out there that can actually come up with some decent-ish lists. So that, we used to look at every single record by hand. Now there's ways to kind of automate all of that. The email writing, AI can't write emails the way it needs to be written for cold outreach, but it can get you closer than it used to. So those are the kind of two things that I saw, that why people were thinking about, or at least a little bit more hesitant about, in terms of that big ongoing retainer, and why people were just happy to go in, get everything set up for them, and they can try run it themselves. Most times it kind of failed, that like they wouldn't do it. There's no accountability, as you say. And even though it's been built, we've shown them how to use it, they still don't know how to press the buttons, which is where the agency model really steps in. But that was kind of one thing that I started noticing as well. People just thinking more AI first, which is interesting.
Well, one of the things that really impressed me in our last conversation, and I think we may have touched on it, but I'm sure you've learned a bunch of things about it since then, is the way that you research markets in terms of how you put your messaging together. Because so much of, and I guess AI makes that easier, and if you want to include that in the mix, it'd be good. But I'm curious in terms of what do you find? So I guess here's the scenario: you're working with a client, they've got a particular product that solves a particular problem, and they've got a particular client that they want to go after, but you're not really sure whether your client with the product is articulating the client's problem in the same way that the client is articulating their own problem to themselves. How do you bridge that gap?
That's a really good question. So it depends on, first and foremost, the availability of information within that market. So some markets are very closely held, especially in, for example, healthcare, right? Healthcare is a market where not a lot is published, where there's some information online, but a lot of it can be inaccurate, right? And you need a lot of accuracy. So in those types of markets, I think the old school way that we used to do still holds steady. Give me 5 of your clients, or 5 of your best clients. Give me the contact numbers. I'm going to send them some kind of voucher, like a Starbucks or an Amazon voucher, and just ask for an hour of the time. Hop on a quick call, something like this, and just record. Just ask really good questions, record their answers, transcribe it, read it, listen to it again, watch the video again, and that'll give you just absolute gold. So that's very old school, but that still is very valid, and probably still my go-to, right? Like if I have time, I still will do that. AI does make it a little bit interesting where it's a market where there's more information out there. So what AI does really well, I think, in terms of research is it can give you the sources. So rather than you going to find the sources yourself, you can just say to ChatGPT, hey, I'm researching on this, give me some stats on this problem, but also tell me where you're getting the numbers from. And very, very quickly, it'll give you a list of here's the source I'm going to, here's the links, and you can check them and go, nope, complete bull. This one's accurate. This one's reliable. This one I'm not sure, and actually go deeper. So the way it saves you time is not by shortcutting and just giving you the answer of this is what people think about or this is the pain point. Because I've seen it come up with some absolute doozies where it's like this is so inaccurate. But if you can get it to put the source into a single list for you, that's going to save you hours and hours of time.
Yeah, definitely. I've been able to do that. I'm in the process of putting together an outreach campaign, or it's actually an education-based marketing presentation for a client that's selling a software solution to the oil and gas industry. Okay. And it's taken me a while, but I've actually found some really good data using AI, which, like you say, it just spits it out, gives you all the sources, all the articles. You can read it, see where everything came from. It's pretty cool. Yep. And it's like everyone gets hung up on the prompts to use, but once you get the hang of it, it's not that hard. Yeah, it's pretty straightforward. One of the questions I was going to ask you is in terms of so that working on that scenario, 5 clients, send them an Amazon voucher. What type of questions would you ask?
One of my favorite, and this is depending on if we're trying to do 2 birds with 1 stone and actually get a testimonial or not at the same time. If we are, one of my favorite questions to ask is, what made you hesitate before signing up with my client? And how have you found the experience since? So one of the things that I want to know is, what other prospects or leads are thinking that could stop a deal from going forward. And most of the time when you're talking to existing clients, they'll say really nice things and they've done an amazing job, they're taking care of us, like great, that's a given, right? If they didn't do those things, you wouldn't be a client. But it's really the things beneath the surface, like what hesitations, what objections you've had, what are some things that you think can still be improved in terms of the service or the relationship, and what other supplies have you even flirted with the idea of going, or even downloaded like a lead magnet from, to kind of look at what the market is or what potential gaps people are trying to fill in the market.
Yeah, that's epic. What made you hesitate? What was it that perhaps made you nearly not go ahead? That's a great question. If you had an hour with them, what else would you ask?
I would ask a few future-pacing questions. So, what results have you seen so far? And projected out 12 months, what do you think that result is going to mean for your business, for your life? Generally, most of the work that we do is actually within businesses. So we're very much B2B. We have done some really good B2C campaigns, obviously, but, that's an easier question to ask in terms of B2B. Like, given the results you've seen, when you've only worked for my client for 3 months, if you projected this out for the next 12 or 24 months, what's the impact it's going to have on your bottom line or team culture, et cetera, et cetera.
Awesome.
Yeah, so that's a good one. I would also say if you were sitting in a room with your closest colleagues and, how would you talk about the service, or how would you talk about the results that you've actually seen so far?
Yep. Got it. Yeah, what would you say about them if they weren't in the room?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, that's so cool because there are people out there that are. I've seen it happen so many times. Is that you'll have a business owner that'll come up with an idea and they'll fall in love with the idea, and they'll just assume that because they think it's a good idea that their potential client will see that it's a good idea, and then they'll get out into the marketplace and they'll literally be all dressed up with nowhere to go. I had a guy I knew that he came up with it was like a brand that made dress up costumes, uniform. Like there was like a you know, and it was for girls, like it was for, you know, there was like the sexy hostess, the dominatrix, like it was just this whole bunch of costumes, like, and this was quite a few years ago, and it was when setting up an e-commerce store was still pretty expensive.
Yeah.
And he's like, I want to say, I reckon he's by the end of it, I reckon he'd spent $500,000.
Oof.
Right, setting up an e-commerce store, buying stock, warehousing the stock, and you know, and then obviously, you know, paying for traffic to go to the website, and it just bombed.
Ouch.
Yeah, and it's like, you know, there's just no validation at all, you know, for the offer, and it's such an important piece. So that's why I think what you just went through is going to be so valuable for so many people out there. It's like, hey, you know, we're coming up with this new offer. We think it's going to be good. I mean, one of the best pieces of advice I think I've ever heard around validating an offer is to have 150 conversations. And, you know, because having 10 conversations probably give you an indication, but it's not really statistically significant. So, you know, I don't know that many people would have time to have 150 conversations, but I think if you speak to 50 people, that should give you a pretty good indication as to whether what you've got has got legs or not.
I would even go so far as to say it's just validated based on revenue and sales. So, like, for example, I actually think that, you know, if you and I had a brand new idea for a business or an offer, it'd be pretty easy for us to go and have 50 conversations because we've got a pretty good network. But just because you have those conversations doesn't mean people would actually buy from you. Or they might be really nice to us and say, oh, yeah, that's an amazing idea.
Yeah.
When it comes time to buy, it's like, oh, actually, you know, I've got something that I've got to prioritize, or just don't have the money at the moment, blah, blah, like some kind of nice excuse, right? Because we've got that relationship. So this is something that I actually used to teach as part of, I used to be a paid coach within someone else's program. And, you know, we had hundreds of small business owners and also entrepreneurs come through. They get so excited after they said, oh, go talk to 20 people. And all 20 of them be like, oh, that's an amazing idea. That's going to be life-changing. And then run the ads, they build the funnels and spend the money on the agencies, and they wouldn't get a single sale. So from that point, I always switched it and said, look, get 10 to 20 sales. The dollar figure doesn't matter. Even if you sell it for $1, if you can get money moving from their bank account into your bank account, that's way stronger validation. Like, I don't need to have conversations. I need to have money. If money flows, you know, that shows you that, hey, someone's got a big enough problem that they'll take something out of their account, put into my account to attempt to solve this.
That's actually a really important distinction, I reckon. Because, yeah, like you say, if you've got a business idea and you go and ask your grandparents and your mum and dad, they're all going to go, oh, that's a great idea. So, yeah, that's a good way to validate it for sure. And the other thing I was going to ask you was in terms of list building. So you touched on that. What's your sort of go-tos in terms of coming up, you know, validating, coming up with lists, and then I guess also like deploying emails without getting your bloody domain shut down.
Yeah, I'll walk you through both of those. Let's start with the list building first. I'll take you through the complicated way that we used to build lists. So we used to go into LinkedIn Sales Navigator and we used to find the people that we want to target. So LinkedIn Sales Nav is like a great database and search engine. You find the people that you want and it shows you a list of like, hey, here's the CEOs who are in the retail space based in Honolulu, USA. Like it's you can go so deep into it, right? You can get very, very specific. From that, we take the first name, last name, company name of the people we try to reach out to and put it into a spreadsheet, just a Google sheet, nothing fancy. We then plug that into a service called hunter.io.
Oh, yeah.
So what Hunter does, and there's other systems that does it. There's a system called Apollo, which does it, a system called Zoom Info. And it's obviously very varied in pricing. But something like a Hunter says, okay, I've got the first name, I've got the last name. I'm going to go and crawl or look at my database first and see if I can find this person's actual email. And the way it builds a database, it goes and crawls the internet and looks for like publicly available information that has their name and email. And then it'll report back and go, yep, we've got Tom Smith at Acne Co. That's a valid email. I can see it in my database. Or what it also does, it can ping the domain or the company website and go, hey, we're trying to email Tom Smith. Is there a Tom Smith here? Yes or no? So that gives you a pretty easy way to build a list. And from that, we plugged it through to a service called Never Bounce, which just validates the emails. You don't want to be sending a whole bunch of emails to email addresses that don't exist. It's going to really damage what you do. It's going to damage your domain, your email domain. So you don't want to do that.
Yep.
And so, LinkedIn, Sales Nav through to Hunter through to Never Bounce, and you have generally a pretty clean list. The reason why I had so many team members building the list manually was because we wanted to do the personalization of it. So we'd look at each profile and go, Tom appeared on the podcast last week. Let's reference a podcast episode. So that's the stuff that is really hard to do. It's getting a lot easier with AI now, but it was impossible to do maybe even just a few years ago.
Yep.
Which is why we needed a massive team. So that's kind of the list building side.
And that's how you would personalize the outreach.
Yeah, I mean, there's just so many different ways to personalize it. I mean, there's really deep personalization where you can even go to someone's website, for example, an architect, and go, "Hey, I was on your website, saw the Brown Street townhouse you guys did, amazing work." Like when you personalize it to that level, they know, hey, someone spent time and energy and effort to look at us, so therefore we should read this email. You can also personalize it on a much lesser much lesser degree. So you can say, "Hey, how's the weather in California?" Not nearly as effective, almost offensive if you do it wrong, but there are different levels, right? And obviously you can get the company names, the job titles, everything like that.
Awesome.
So then the second part of that was how do we send emails and not get our own email domain or our own company domain blacklisted? We never ever sent on the primary domain. So what that means is you've got a primary domain, which is, let's just say will.com. It will be my primary domain. That's not my website. Please don't go to that. But say will.com. If I send a bunch of spam or really badly written emails from that and people click spam when they receive it, there's an international list where people go, well, it reports back and it goes, oh, this domain will.com sends a lot of spam emails out. So therefore, if you get an email from here, all the email servers just block it straight off the bat. So to avoid doing that, we bought a bunch of new domains for all of our clients. So if something did happen, knock on wood, if it did happen, it wouldn't affect the actual business domain. So if they're sending out actual client emails, if they're sending invoices, customer service stuff, it wouldn't end up in spam. So we had that kind of separation. But we just also focus on sending really good emails that people don't hit the spam button on.
Gotcha. And is there like third-party services that work in terms of deploying emails? It just seems like there's so many different CRMs out there at the moment, so many different options. It's like which one, like if you've got, say, a lot of my clients will be using something like HubSpot or, MailChimp or, if you're going to, I got clients that have got 30,000 emails, 8,000 emails. Do they use their MailChimp account? Do they use their HubSpot account? Or do they use something else that creates a bit of a firewall just in case people get the shits?
That's a really, really good question. It should always be separate. So like a HubSpot or a MailChimp, that's for me anyway, like a warm email list. So people who know of you, who have opted in or said, yep, I want something from you, right? That's where that kind of sits, where they're really good leads or they're warmer leads. They'll sit in the hub. The cold email stuff, I never run out of I never run from CRMs because you don't want to muddy the data and just have a bunch of junk in there. So there's two really great systems if you're looking at cold emailing or reaching out to people who aren't on your database.
Yep.
One is called QuickMail.
Yep.
QuickMail.io, I think it is, and the other one is called Instantly. So that they're competitors, much of a muchness. I personally prefer QuickMail just because it was built by an engineer, so it tends to get more emails into inboxes. But Instantly is also quite quick to set up and very easy to use, and the interface is also a little bit easier compared to QuickMail. But QuickMail is more powerful.
Yep.
So those are just two systems, and it just automates the entire process. So if you're sending an email campaign with 5 emails, if anybody replies to emails 1 and 2, they don't get the rest of the emails, which is quite good. Yeah, so different functionality, but we use different systems to actually do the outreach.
What about like a list of people that have been customers or have inquired, but haven't done anything, but also haven't been communicated with, like they haven't been sent like a newsletter, or would you use a quick mail or an instantly for reconnecting with them?
I wouldn't actually. I'd keep that inside the native CRM or
Yep.
or the warm email system. There's two really great campaigns that you can actually run if that's the situation. One is a re-engagement campaign. So something like, "Hey, it's been a while since we've had any contact. We just created this other resource or case study which I thought you might like. I just wanted to see if you're still interested in actually getting resources like this."
Yep.
That's a very high overview. Obviously, don't say that in the email exactly, but it's just the idea is, hey, we've done something new. We haven't communicated in a while. Do you want to see this? Yes or no? Is it still relevant to you? Another campaign you can run, which is a little bit more aggressive but very highly effective, is, hey, can we remove you from our list? So, it's just saying, hey, it's just been a while. You haven't opened any of our emails. I don't want to keep appearing in your inbox if it's not relevant for you. Can you just let me know? Should I take you off my list? If I don't hear from you in the next week or so, then I'll just go ahead and actually take you off the list anyway.
Yeah, because you get I want to say judged, but it's not necessarily the right word, but I think it still works in terms of your deliverability for your open rates too, don't you?
Yeah.
Like in terms of the servers and all that sort of stuff. Like if you're sending out a bunch of emails and no one's opening them, that affects your ongoing deliverability.
Yeah, long term, it doesn't look good.
No,
That's for sure.
no. Awesome. Well, mate. Well, this has been epic. I really appreciate you letting me ask you a bunch of questions. I mean, I've made a truckload of notes. Everything that you've said is going to be really useful for me. So I'm sure that everyone else that's listening to it is going to get a bunch of value out of what we've talked about, just in terms of, how to perhaps transition from just, monthly retainer type work to upfront setup and then ongoing monthly, hearing about your exit for the business, what it was that allowed you to sell an agency in a sea of also rans and have something unique enough that someone wanted to actually pay because they could see that it would add value to their existing agency. I mean, imagine if you just had like a standard garden variety type digital agency. There's no way in the world they would have bought your business because it would have been exactly the same as theirs. So, so there's that. Questions to ask to survey clients before you put a campaign together, how to research markets, cold outreach. Mate, you've shared so much amazing stuff. Is there anything that you're working on right now where people can find you if they want to continue to get nuggets of gold from Will Wang?
Yeah.
In addition to what they're going to get from today's discussion.
No, definitely. So I think the best place to reach me at the moment is probably from my LinkedIn profile. So I think it ends with Will Wang lives here. But essentially at the moment, I'm just working on some consulting stuff at the moment. So clients who who want to get more strategic about how they're approaching the market, what they're doing, and who just need some guidance on strategy, not so much execution. Helping some clients out that way, and it seems to be working really well. People seem to be pretty happy with me on that front. So that's always a good sign. And then I'm also about to launch a smaller membership. So one of the challenges that I really wanted to solve during my agency day was that, we come across these amazing businesses who, they're small business owners, they're smaller businesses doing under $1 million a year in revenue, and they need just as much help as some bigger businesses. And oftentimes those businesses, if you can help them, the impact on their life is just so much more substantial. Like, you can help someone go from $100,000 to $1 million and change your life entirely. Whereas a lot of that stuff we were doing with agencies was, I can put 10 or 20 or even $100 million extra into RACV's bank account and no one's life changing. There's no difference. Like, okay, great. So what? Shareholders are happy for all of 2 seconds and it's back to the grind.
All of 1 quarter.
Yeah, exactly, right? So I'm just about to launch a program to help small business owners who don't need an agency. They just need some direction, some support, some accountability and guidance, and creating a tribe or community of people and small business owners to help them grow and hit the next level. So again, nothing's up and running just yet. It's going to be called Scale Tribe. But if people are interested, they can hit me up on LinkedIn, and I can share some more details, and get people in for a month or so, and see if they like it.
Awesome. Well, I would certainly be suggesting that people, at least in the short term, follow you on LinkedIn so that they can see when all of that launches. Because I'm sure whatever it is, it'll be massive value compared to what people would invest to be there. So, mate, just epic to have you on again. Thanks so much for being so generous with what you shared. Mate, it's always a pleasure to catch up.
Mate, thank you so much for having me back on. And I mean, if anyone finds this useful, it would absolutely make my day. This is why we do it. So thanks, mate, and thanks for all the work that you do and all the good information that you share as well.
Cheers.
You've been listening to Master Dealmaker Secrets with John Blake. Subscribe to get more in-depth strategies and maximize your sales process with new episodes every other week. And double your inquiry to sale conversion with the lead flow you already have. Go to johnblakeaudio.com for his exclusive, free, no fluff audio training and companion PDF guide.